Cape Town's current land and housing crisis is informed by various complex issues that warrant addressing. The first, of course, is it's rooted in a very violent historical, colonial and apartheid context, where during both these eras, the colonial era as well as the apartheid era, spatial planning made it difficult, if not definitely impossible, for a majority of the people to gain access to land in a meaningful way. This was done, of course, through various mechanisms at a time where dispossession more than access was the norm. And this being done through this state machinery, supported, of course, by very exclusionary laws and policies, which meant that people, particularly black people, could not have access to title to land. And even if they had some form of access to land, that title was extremely insecure and could prompt and inform displacement from various parts of the city. And so it is in this context that the authors of this submission to the president have called for specific intervention towards alleviating this huge and complex problem, which is to unlock well-located parcels of land that are owned by the national government as a means to begin to address the legacy of apartheid spatial planning, but also meaningfully address a host of issues, being this housing crisis, as well as the deepening inequality that we can see, yes, not just in Cape Town and across the city, across the cities in South Africa, and the need to unlock parcels of land is a critical mechanism towards addressing these issues.
So the core of the submission that we're submitting to the presidency is really focusing on the release of 3 parcels of land in Cape Town: Yesterplaat, Wingsfield and Youngsfield. The cumulative 3 land parcels amount to about 688 hectares of land within 10 kilometers of the CBD. These are located in very well located areas, economic corridors, industrial areas, proximity to schools, to health clinics and all of those pieces. And we estimate, just by conservative measures, that this could probably take care of about 30% of the housing backlog that City of Cape Town currently experiences. There's about 350,000 households that live in informal structures, in poor shelter conditions, and this would probably provide anywhere between 40 to 70,000 homes for people that are desperately looking for homes. So, I mean, these sites have been vacant for a very long time, and from DAG's perspective, our first publication in 1991, which was a hard print, spoke about these 3 parcels of land being very essential if we have to address any kind of housing backlog and housing rights issues in Cape Town. And those parcels are still sitting vacant. There are serious environmental concerns and some of the other concerns, but they far outstrip the amount of housing that they could provide for the poor.
Cape Town has one of the most exclusionary housing markets in the country, and indeed, if looked at on a broader scale, in the world. This is related to, of course, the sheer inability for people to afford access to their homes, and even when they do have an ability to perhaps secure a loan, a mortgage, and afford their homes, this is not something that is sustainable. Including those who are renting their homes. And that inaffordability has, of course, been exacerbated by the COVID pandemic and the inability for people to secure employment or to secure full-time employment, and indeed have access to their jobs during this most difficult past period.
Obviously, the current approach to housing has been really about cheap land and poor location, and that's really transferring the burden of transportation, of housing costs, of poor land markets and exclusionary land markets, particularly in the inner city, to the poor on the periphery. And these particular parcels could make a significant dent, not just on bringing people close to the inner city to economic opportunities, but also perhaps really make an inroad in providing people with access to housing in a very different terms and conditions. I guess one of the big advantages to these sites, besides being within the 10-kilometer radius of CBD, is the fact they sit between massive trunk lines and bulk infrastructure, water, sanitation, and so on. along and adjoining and adjacent to well-serviced neighborhoods in that respect. So that allows it a much easier unlocking of these parcels of land just by virtue of the negligible cost that would have to go and the negligible investment that would have to go compared to a greenfield site on the periphery of the city.
Acting on releasing these parcels of land is something that is rooted in various pieces of legislation and existing obligations that all levels of government have. The first worth mentioning is the Spatial Planning and Land Use Management Act, a relatively new piece of legislation from 2014, which really addresses the need for all levels of government to to advance the principle of spatial justice, which in our context definitely would have implications for where and when developments are being made.
These particular parcels of land have been earmarked for a long time to be released. I think the first IDPs which came out from 1999 to 2001 already earmarked these parcels of land. So this is not a new commitment that the presidency is making. I think this is a commitment that's a historical commitment to release these parcels of land for the purposes of housing and for the urban poor. Unfortunately, none of that has materialized, and despite the claims by the National Department of Public Works or from the National Department of Human Settlements to the presidency, these three parcels, through repeated commitments, continue to remain passive and underutilized in that particular process. So the submission is really looking at different ways in which we could propose different housing typologies, differently using these three sites as a way of leapfrogging into getting the state to commit to release large tracts of land which it's been holding for the last 25 years. So that's the real ask in this submission, and as we're talking to various community networks, to various community groups, organizations, social movements, we're seeing a strong appetite from the communities to really say, but asking the same questions: why is this land not being released? Why is this land not being utilized for housing since it's already underutilized? So I think those are the questions that we're asking. Through this submission, we're also requesting the presidency for a focused engagement where we could have a discussion, we could present our ideas, we could share thoughts and perhaps present some kind of direction to the national departments in the manner in which they could release these particular parcels of land.